Hello, Year 7. Welcome to the second lesson in the new course, which by now I think you know what it's actually about. Most of your soothsayings were actually quite on the money. Well done, Year 7. It's very entertaining to read that you've got it. You've all pretty much tumbled the idea that Charles I is spoiled and Charles I is going to run into trouble. Specifically, he's going to run into trouble with the representatives of the nobles and the merchants. They are in something called Parliament. Careful with the spelling of Parliament. It's got an A in it for reasons I don't quite understand. So I guess I should be saying Parliament. So it's Parliament. We pronounce it Parliament. English, it's a wonderful language. The other thing I said I was going to do was feedback on some of your ideas about portraits, because I've got some brilliant ideas and we do need to share those and we do need to talk about exactly how they work. So if I fire this up and you can now see what I can see. Here is our first portrait of Charles I, and there are a number of things to talk about here. We can talk about the fact that he's got himself off to one side, but he's in the light. Therefore, your eye is drawn to him. He's wearing fancy clothes. He's showing off his wealth and his fashion sense. Several people pointed out he's holding a sword, and therefore he's got a warlike nature about him. But you look at that sword, and it's a decorative sword. It's very clear that sword doesn't really get used for battle. It's used for fencing, it's used for duels. Look at how thin that blade is. It's a rapier. It's supposed to be a reference not to his warlike nature, but to his wit, his humour. It's sharp. We call people rapier wit, ask your parents. And you can see here, that's what he's trying to say. So he wants to look like a warlike leader, he wants to look like a proper king, but he's saying that his wit is more important than his fighting ability. That's why he's off his horse. Also, you've got his grooms here. They're looking after his horse for him. He's supposed to be outdoors. It's very clear that this has actually been posed indoors and then the background's been painted in later. Basically, it's vanity, pure vanity. What did Charles want to think? They want people to think about him. Well, he wanted to think that he was urbane. He's got his walking stick here. He wanted to think he was clever, the rapier wit. He wanted to think he was fashionable, the hat on a rakish angle. Note it's not straight. He wanted to think of him as rich and powerful. How would a noble, bishop, or merchant look at this? Well, most of Charles's grooms and squires would have been the children of nobility. The fact that he doesn't seem to care about them, the fact that they're in the darkness, the fact that he bothers to paint them in there at all in a subservient role would really worry people in the nobility. Nobles didn't want to see themselves as servants. They wanted to see themselves as partners in running the country. And here, Charles is very much putting them in the background and in the dark. And he's made a point of that. That's going to upset nobles. Bishops are going to say, well, where's the religion? Where's your godly right to rule? And Charles says, it doesn't matter. God put me here. I can do what I like. Bishops aren't going to like that. And merchants, well, merchants are going to look at this and say, well, what's all this with the fancy clothes? You think you've got a rapier wit, mate? That's great. And you're ruling our needs? They're not there. What would you call this painting? I don't actually know its proper title, but there's been some good ideas. A lot of you got very descriptive, i.e. Charles outside. Usually a title of a painting is sort of a punchy title, and it's supposed to sum up what it does, if that makes sense. So you might say Charles the Wit or Charles the Rapier to make it even more subtle. Second one is this one. It's a family portrait, and this one's really odd. At first glance, you're saying, well, there's a lot of wasted parts of this portrait. This entire top half of the portrait seems utterly pointless. So let's label this. We've got Charles here, the family man. Note his head is higher than his wife's. His head is the highest because he is the king. We know he's the king. He's got your right hand. The right hand is the one you use your sword with. The right hand is the hand of power, the dominant hand next to the crown. He's got his children, the next in line to the throne. They're equally important. And we've got his dog. The dog was bred specifically to look like him. No, really, it actually was. It's a King Charles Spaniel. And they're dressed in very, very fine clothes. Yellow in thread was very difficult to get hold of. So the fact that his wife is dressed almost entirely in yellow is a big, big deal. He's dressed in blue, the most expensive fabric. So, all right, fair play, that's fairly obvious. I mean, even the curtain, therefore, becomes obvious. It's gold thread. So what's with the pillars? Well, it's supposed to show that Charles is the pillar on which the entire nation stands, that he's chosen by God. That's why I've got this huge sky that's stormy and cloudy. He has to guide us through it. And that he is in control of all the trade and all the wealth in all the cities. That's what's going on there. So on the face of it, quite easy. Then you look at it and go, there's more to this than meets the eye. What did Charles want people to think about him? He wanted people to think that he was strong, he was stable, he was a paternal father figure. He is a dad. He will bring the discipline, but he'll also bring the pride. He will watch from afar. He will, well, be a pillar of the community. He will stand firm. And what does it suggest? Again, you've got the vanity here. We haven't heard anything about his personality or things that he did to suggest that this was necessary, to suggest that he was in fact a bit of a dad. How are merchants, bishops and nobles going to interpret this? Well, I'm sure the merchants aren't terribly happy by the idea that Charles is saying that all of that prosperity is down to him. They're saying, well, no, it's down to our hard work. I'm sure the nobles aren't very happy that there's a single pillar. There are no other pillars in this painting. There's just Charles. He can rule alone. No one else needs to help him. Bishops? Well, here's an interesting one. His wife, Henrietta, is a Catholic. Let's go leave that there, given what you know about religion under the Tudors, which wasn't that long ago. So there's an issue here. This one is in black and white. I couldn't find the colour version, and I apologise. But again, you've got this idea, and I'm sure you picked it up. You've got his chain of office. We've seen that before when we're talking about Henry the Fa VIII. We've got his armour. He's a warlike leader. Again, that's a Henry the VIII thing. We've got his staff of office. That's supposed to show, by the way, that particular staff is one that holds scrolls. It's supposed to be passing messages in war, so that it can't be easily read. And you've got the crown, obviously, because he's a king, and helmet, so he goes out to fight. But is this really a fighting uniform? Charles can't help himself. He's got the frilly collar. He's got the flowing locks. It's very clear Charles wants to be seen as a warlike ruler, as a strong military leader. That's why he's got himself being shown, and again with the pillar, in armour. But the fact is, that hair will not fit in that helmet. It can't. Those collars are designed to be seen, not fighting costume. He can't help himself. He wants to show himself as being fashionable and clever. And people looking at this are going to go, So what does it actually suggest about his personality? He's vain, very, very vain. He's so vain, he probably thinks this lesson is about him. As a noble, a bishop, or a merchant, this guy's a joke. He wants to be seen as a military leader. But look at that collar. He ain't going to fight. Look at the hair. What's he playing at? I mean, sure, it's very fashionable. Look at that beard. It's not going to fit in a military helmet. He can't fight a war. Plus, the armour he shows himself in is out of date by this point. People are using muskets, matchlock muskets. They fire through plate armour. This is out of date. He's appealing to something that's gone, long gone. He doesn't understand. He looks a bit of a joke. This one, by now you know the drill. We've got the pillar, we've got the ermine, only the monarch is allowed to wear ermine. We've got the blue, the most expensive fabric. We've got these ridiculously oversized slippers. Now, when Henry the Fa VIII did this, it was all about showing his civilization. Look, I wear different things on my special floors than I do outside. Charles is trying to tap into that. I don't think he's quite got the problem, though. Those buckles are ridiculous. What did he want people to think? Well, he wanted people to think that he was powerful, fashionable, clever. By now you know. What did he actually look like? Well, you tell me, what does he actually look like? He looks a bit of a Burke. He looks a fop. He looks a bit silly. Nobles, again, single pillar. Don't kings need their help? After all, they did that whole thing with Runnymede and King John. Doesn't that mean anything? What about Parliament? Merchants? Where's the trade? This is almost entirely the king. Throwing money at things like clothes. Bishops? Where's God? Where's the church? My favourite. This is clearly posed indoors, but it's supposed to show him returning from a conquering battle where he's won a great victory. Here we have a random noble looking up with admiration to his master, holding his helmet for him. Here's a horse, a white charger, coming through a triumphant gateway from the outside to the inside of the court. But again, you can see that that's not how you ride a horse. If you've ever ridden a horse, you know that's not how you ride a horse. Certainly not one that looks like that. And this, the coat of arms of the British Isles, including Ireland, England, no, Lion Rampant is Scotland, sorry, and that's England down here. So it's supposed to show a united kingdom. That's what's going on here. You've got the blue sash, which is a leadership thing. We've got the staff of office again, which for some reason is being plugged directly into the side of the poor horse. What's the horse ever done to deserve this? Got his hands, feet in the stirrups. I don't know if you ride horses. I'm fairly certain that's not what you do. He's in armour again, but we've got this wonderfully frilly lace collar and the flowing locks of hair. Again, if he's coming back from a triumphant battle, why is his right hand not on a sword held aloft in celebration? Charles doesn't really know what he's doing. He's never fought a battle. That much is obvious. He's showing off, and he wants to be seen as a military leader again, but it's falling a bit flat. As a noble, why are you looking up with admiration to a man who can't fight a battle? Why are you carrying his helmet? Why are you waiting indoors with that helmet? Again, he doesn't know what he's doing. It looks stupid. As a merchant, there's a lot of money being thrown at something that's pointless. We come back to the frilly collar. It's just fashion. And as a bishop, yeah, where's the church here? Where's the thanks to God? There's not even a hint. There's just nothing. There's a nothing. And by now you're getting the idea. Fashionable clothes, lots of red in this one, single pillar, the office, trappings of office, there's the staff, there's the crown, there's the orb representing the world. I guess we've actually got a reference to religion here with the crosses on top. We've got his walking stick, we've got his long hair, we've got his rapier, and by now you know what this means. It's just another portrait showing the same thing. So if you chose this portrait rather than the earlier one, don't worry, it's got exactly the same things in it. This is why I said pick one at random. You can't really miss what he's trying to do. There are a lot of portraits. This one's my favorite because it's Charles 3 times. Now, obviously, that's not reality. He's not one of a series of triplets. It's supposed to show Charles looking at Charles. It's Charles 3 times. And that's a reference to religion. There are 3 things in God. There's God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. And 3 in 1, 1 in 3, that's God. Charles has just had himself painted as 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. If you're a bishop, you go, what? Are you saying you're like God? Well, Charles is, yes. And he's got himself with the same lace collar. This is going to cause quite the stir. Why has he done this? Well, most people, sorry, I have hair in my mouth. Most people have a best side. Catch me on my best side. Charles decided that he had 3. And so he decided to have a portrait done with all of his best sides. I wish I were joking, but I'm not. What does this suggest about his personality? He's not only vain, he doesn't quite get what he's doing. He's dangerously vain. Merchants and nobles are going to look at this and go, oh, we've got another one of those ones. Oh, no. And again, well, you can work it out for yourselves. So, what's likely to happen? You already know, you picked it up. You're going to end up with some clash between him and Parliament, or sorry, Parliament, because the spelling. And they could come to blows, a little bit like King John, because he's ignoring his nobles, a little bit like King John. It's going to take something to set it off, though, and it's that I'd like to talk about